किया होगा आज।
Hello and welcome. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in China after a gap of 7 years for the first time after the thaw following the Kazan meeting with President Xi Jinping and the disengagement and patrolling agreement at the line of actual control reached in October last year. He's in the port city of Tianjin for the 25th Shanghai Cooperation Organization or SCO Summit, which began as a security grouping way back in 2001 before the earlier avatar of Shanghai 5 and Shanghai 6 led by China and Russia, but brought countries like India on board in subsequent years to widen its geographical and strategic ambit. I'm Munmun Bhattacharya. With me is my colleague Gautam Roy.
Thanks, Munmun. And Prime Minister Modi is in Tianjin after a landmark blockbuster bilateral trip to Japan with a list of outcomes at 21 pointers. Japan has not only committed to investing $68 billion in India over the next 10 years, but also to expand the partnership with India in domains that are critical and as wide as defense and semiconductors. Now, a strong message has been sent out to the world as to the kind of possibilities which exist between nations which trust and respect each other and see their success in the success of the other. The big question now is, what will be the message which will emerge from Tianjin when the world faces multiple challenges ranging from conflicts to tariff tyranny? We'll be looking at all this very closely with our special broadcast where we'll have guests as well as ground reports. 25th SCO Summit, boosting security and development.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi is visiting China for the much-anticipated Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. All eyes are now on one of Asia's biggest multilateral gatherings and India's engagements. Leading India's Jessica Taneja reports from Tianjin.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi's participation at the Tianjin SCO Summit represents a significant moment for India's role within this important Eurasian regional bloc, where India has been a full member since 2017 and previously held the presidency of the Council of Heads of State. The summit will provide a platform to advance regional security cooperation, economic partnerships, and counter-terrorism efforts which are central to India's strategic interest in the region.
Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi will visit Tianjin, China for the 25th meeting of the Council of Heads of State of the Shanghai Cooperation Council, the SCO. The SCO was established with the primary goal of countering three evils of terrorism, separatism and extremism, which continue to remain a challenge. Today, as a regional platform, there is a broader range of sectors of cooperation among the SCO members.
During the summit, PM Modi will hold various bilateral meetings to discuss key issues such as regional stability, border security, trade connectivity, and multilateral cooperation. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to China for the SCO Summit will intend to extend strategic cooperation, secure natural resources, and also economic growth. At the same time, respond constructively to protectionist trade practices, as well as ensuring advocacy for a multipolar Eurasia. This visit follows a series of diplomatic exchanges between India and China, including bilateral meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi in Kazan last year, and recent visit by Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi to India. Prime Minister Modi's arrival in Tianjin will highlight India's proactive diplomacy in Asia, reflecting a strategic blend of multilateral engagement and bilateral focus on stability and growth in a critical geopolitical context. Jessica Taneja for DD India in Tianjin, China.
So, Munmun, the 25th meeting of the Council of Heads of State, that's what it's called, of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization will begin today in Tianjin, China, although The main summit will take place tomorrow. Today, of course, there's a dinner, a gala dinner that will be thrown for all the leaders who've come from different parts of Eurasia. Now, the two-day deliberations are being attended by top leaders from more than 20 countries and heads of 10 international organizations as well. This is the 5th time that China is hosting the SCO Summit, which will be chaired by President Xi Jinping.
Under China's chairmanship, the year 2025 has been declared as the SCO Year of Sustainable Development, with the theme upholding the Shanghai Spirit. SCO on the move. The two-day Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit begins today in Tianjin.
The summit will review the SCO's achievements over the past 25 years, adopt a 10-year development strategy and deliberate upon crucial issues such as regional security, connectivity, sustainable development, counter-terrorism and cultural cooperation.
Right. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's active participation is expected to further strengthen India's role and also give fresh momentum to cooperation and solidarity among SCO member states.
The SCO Summit will begin with an official banquet hosted by President Xi on Sunday, which is later tonight.
Earlier, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had arrived in Tianjin on Saturday to attend the summit, where he was accorded a grand welcome from the airport to the hotel.
Prime Minister Modi and Chinese President Xi are set to meet in Tianjin on Sunday. In fact, that meeting could very well be on right now. This was their first one in about 10 months for wide-ranging talks. Prime Minister Modi is also scheduled to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin during the course of the summit. Other bilateral engagements could also be on the cards.
And so joining us now for perspective is Ambassador C. Rajashekhar, former Indian ambassador, and Dr. C. Rajkumar, Vice Chancellor of O.P. Jindal Global University, is expected to join us in a bit. But Ambassador, welcome to this special broadcast. Your thoughts on a day when the world leaders are congregating from Asia, Europe and even Africa.
I think we have Dr. Rajkumar with us right now.
Right. So Professor Rajkumar is with us. Professor Rajkumar, your thoughts on the highest representation ever at the SCO in 25 years in China. What does this indicate to your mind?
Good morning to all of you, and absolutely, it's indeed truly remarkable, not only because of the fact that the Honorable Prime Minister of India is participating in the SCO Summit. SCO Summit happens, on a schedule, but because of the, relationship that has been somewhat challenging for some years because of the sort of border tensions that has been prevailing. This particular visit has been watched very closely, not only within India and China, but also around the world. It assumes greater significance, undoubtedly, because of the ongoing trade-related tensions between India and the United States. But I must confess that I think it's important for us to recognize that even at the Chinese side, there is some degree of trepidation as this meeting happens, especially because of the fact that we need to recognize that India and China are poised to be greater powers. There is need for a deeper sense of trust that need to be built around. And unfortunately, there have been many challenges. But the fact that the Indian Prime Minister has taken this effort to go and participate in this summit in Tianjin sends a very powerful signal to the Chinese side that India is serious to build that relationship between India and China. Of course, the Prime Minister has already taken many efforts since he took over office in 2014. Both visits to Gujarat and Tamil Nadu, both those summits were very significant. His own visit to China and speech at the Tsinghua University there, all of them signal his intention to be able to build that relationship. But today is indeed an important moment when we can reimagine that relationship and make it better.
Well, certainly, let's talk about that relationship as well, because the Prime Minister is in China after a gap of 7 years, the first time after what had happened in Galwan, the first time after then what happened in Kazan, which led to a thaw in ties as well. We've seen the Chinese Foreign Minister visiting India as well after that. Special representative level talks also took place here with our National Security Advisor, apart from that engagement with our External Affairs Minister. So do you see that India and China also have a fresh opportunity now to build trust, and the biggest, I guess, impediment to that now is following disengagement, de-escalation at the border. We have 50,000 troops, give or take, on each side, still, even after that thaw in Kazan.
So you're absolutely right. There are these challenges confronting us in the relationship. But let me give a very interesting parallel that might help our viewers today. You know, India has, of course, had a very strong relationship with Japan. Just before this visit, our Prime Minister was in Japan. Something extraordinary happened there. You just mentioned about it. But let's think for a moment the Japan-China relationship. We know that since the Second World War and even after that, there has been fair degree of distrust between China and Japan. There are lots of other challenges in that relationship. But guess what? China remains Japan's #1 trading partner in the world. There is a trade, the Japan trade in China is nearly $300 billion. If you look at the largest number of immigrants in Japan, they happen to be Chinese. There are over 150,000 Chinese students studying in Japan. In a way, my point is that it's important for us to recognize that we need to develop a more compartmentalized approach towards building relationship in a multipolar world. India and China will continue to disagree on a number of issues, but we need to identify where our interests converge, especially when it comes to providing global leadership on a number of issues.
Okay, we've got some breaking news coming in right now. The bilateral between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi has begun. We had gotten an alert a little while earlier about that meeting to begin shortly. President Xi, in fact, has been meeting different leaders after their arrival in Tianjin, and now Prime Minister Modi is also meeting him. This is their first bilateral meeting after, Kazan was in a different country altogether, but in China, on Chinese soil, a bilateral meeting, that is quite significant moment.
Absolutely. That's happening after 7 years, because the last time the Prime Minister had gone there was in 2018 when he had gone for the SCO Summit and for another meeting as well. So after that,
the Wuhan,
yes, the Wuhan informal summit. So having said that, coming back to you, Professor, are we looking at further progression and normalization of this relationship? And what are the core concerns that you think India will stick out its neck on?
Well, let's start with the border dispute. Of course, we have an unresolved boundary problem of almost 3,500 kilometers that has led to both the standoffs in Doklam in 2017 and Galwan in 2020. I think we need to work towards, addressing the militarization that is prevailing in the line of actual control. We also need to revive the border talks more significantly. I think India should stress upon those issues. One of the things about India-China relationship which we need to recognize is that it's important for us to differentiate between cross-border terrorism and sending of suicide bombers into our country and engaging in those type of attacks on the one hand, and border disputes leading to land grabs and other types of things that we know China is engaged with. I think a subtle distinction needs to be made, and we need to emphasize on that. We, of course, need to work on our trade deficit, although the trade between India and China has been almost $130 billion plus. We have a $100 billion deficit. We need to address that. I think there's something else that we need to also recognize. China today has assumed a global leadership role in research, innovation, technology, as well as technological transformation through significant investments in quantum technologies. We have a lot to gain through that, and I think once the current impasse ends, hopefully through this meeting, there are possibilities for India and China to collaborate on a number of other sectors while engaging with China on those important border disputes.
But do you think that sort of trust, that level of trust is possible? Because there is a fear, there's always been a fear, I don't know, rational, irrational, that when Chinese tech comes somewhere, there are some hidden, there are like Trojans in there. And for India to be able to trust China once again, first of all, perhaps the line of actual control should be made a test case and there should be de-escalation.
I think it's very important for us to recognize that the use of the word trust that we talk when it comes to countries, it should be very different from what we mean by trust in, say, individual relationships. I think it's fair to say that we need to have enough ring fencing and protective measures so that such kind of technological intrusions do not happen. That's how established, developed countries deal with it. But listen, trust is also both sides, right? Today, I mean, there are Chinese media, some of them reporting that not to trust India as we speak. And possibly because of the fact that today, this visit and possibly the new engagement that we're having with China is happening in the background of whatever that has happened with India-US relations. So I think it's important for civilizational countries, which has a long and well-evolved civilization heritage between India and China, to be able to act as more mature countries and build these relationships and recognize the challenges that come with it and build trust of that kind. And to address your question, undoubtedly, those are issues that India need to be considering.
Right, Professor, do you think that the proof of the pudding really would be in the eating? For instance, we just look at the trade issue. Then India would want resumption of fertilizers that China had stopped, resumption of rare earth magnets that India needs in its automobile industry. India would want tunneling equipment for its Himalayan projects as well. And there was a decision that China had earlier taken to withdraw its engineers from an iPhone production factory here in India. So do you think that these are some issues where India would want its interests safeguarded as well, while making sure that there should be no dumping of Chinese goods here? Because, like you said, there is already an existing trade deficit of
and India is already showing to us they were restoring visas, even
yes,
for their technical personnel to come here. That's something that's been talked about and agreed.
Yes, but it's also important to recognize that when all of this is happening, Chinese did not stop Indians to travel to China, and so we did. And I think it's also important that the visa liberalization and normalization process for both business and tourist visa should resume soon. But I entirely agree with you that we have enough technological resources, including technological know-how, which can create those safety measures and precautions, including very strong firewalls when we want to work with Chinese tech companies. I think that every country ought to be conscious of this, but given our past and our concerns with China, there is nothing wrong in providing those checks and balances. But a blanket ban for Chinese companies to enter into so many other sectors, that may not be in India's best interest.
But what about the strategic sectors? If we can keep the strategic sectors out and invite investment in non-strategic sectors, that should be doable, isn't it? Though China would want the restrictions that India had imposed back in 2020 on FDI from China into India as per one particular order.
Press Note 3.
Yes, Press Note 3 to be revoked. And in fact, I also remember that President Xi Jinping has written a letter to President Draupadi Murmu of India, also complaining about certain American businesses and investments here in India, which it says rivals and affects Chinese interests. So putting it all together, do you think some sort of incremental progress can be made there, especially in non-strategic sectors by India?
Absolutely. In fact, you said it right. The Press Note 3 should be immediately revisited. We also have the 300 plus Chinese apps which have been banned over data security. I think some degree of intervention there also will send the right signal. You mentioned about the sort of non-strategic sectors, 100%. I think there is a lot that India could be benefited by it. I mean, I keep coming to the fact that since I head a university, I can say that today, if you look at the global innovations in science and technology that's happening in the university space, China is leading the world. In fact, it is soon to overtake even developed countries such as United States and UK and Western Europe, because of the fact that significant investment in R&D has gone through in China. And today, Chinese universities are among the top in the world. I mean, if you look at any ranking parameter, you will find 10 Chinese universities among the top 100 in the world. And so that is the kind of extraordinary research-based impetus in all areas Chinese universities are, and it's important for us to collaborate with them.
But let me play the devil's advocate here. Should all this be considered with the proviso that China seriously look at the point that India has been making consistently, that there should be de-escalation at the line of actual control, A, and B, how terrorism should be incorporated in the agenda of bodies like SCO. Once when India was hosting it, we managed to get in something about cross-border movement of terrorists, but in the last summit, I believe in Astana, it wasn't there. It was eliminated, and our defense minister came back disappointed from China as well, just ahead of this particular summit in Tianjin.
I can't do better than giving you the example of Japan and China. There is a very strong theory of cold politics and hot economics, where leaders on both sides should consciously separate political disputes from economic cooperation. I mean, even at times of heightened diplomatic tension, business delegations, joint ventures, investments ought to continue. And I think that will show a greater degree of political maturity, as opposed to reacting to these relationships when we are ourselves facing some challenges because of other factors that are operating in the world. In fact, this is a very good moment when we need to recognize that our relationship with countries such as China should not depend upon whatever else is happening with our relationship with other countries. Chinese are obviously noting that and taking cognizance of that, and it's important for us to charter a new framework, a new imagination in the context of India-China relations.
Just taking the point that you had made on research forward, you're telling us that if you look at the ranking of universities worldwide, then many Chinese universities do top in those rankings we've seen of late particularly. But would you also recommend that there should be greater research vigor within India in various universities? When we look at various Chinese studies, they are more or less concentrated in either New Delhi or metros. Maybe we could look at translation into vernacular languages, local languages, going deep within the hinterland insofar as research is concerned, have more rigorous training in Mandarin and Chinese to understand China, so that the decisions are not reactive in a sense based on, say, trade figures or the military positions, etc. And we have a deeper understanding of Chinese history, of the kind of century of humiliation, the Confucian ideas of governance within China, and the Maoist revolution there. The various politics, the political factions that are there within the CPC, and the kind of challenges that are there, as per many experts and scholars, to even the domination, so to say, or the leadership of Xi Jinping within the CPC, the Chinese Communist Party.
I think you are absolutely right, and you hit it on all those aspects. I've always maintained that Indian universities need to up their ante. We have more than 1,000 universities in India, more than 50,000 plus colleges, and I think it is only fair to say that the last decade has been quite significant when it comes to the kind of impetus that higher education has received. The national education policy that was announced in 2020 is indeed a game changer. It has enabled many Indian universities to aspire to be among the top institutions of the world. Of course, these things take time. The policy on institutions of eminence brought out by the Prime Minister Modi's government is also a unique opportunity for Indian institutions to reimagine themselves. But it's also important to recognize that university spaces are inherently built on partnerships and collaborations. If you look at the Chinese universities in its phase and growth and evolution, they are built around extraordinary partnerships with the top UK, US and European universities. Even in our own context, if you look at the establishment of IITs in just after our independence, we had very strong and substantive collaborations with American universities, which essentially built these research institutions. So my point is that we really need to work on our universities. We need to make them truly research institutions, but we also need to work on building collaborations and partnerships. I mean, the reality is today, we have, just before COVID, I'm sure you may be aware, 25,000 plus Indian students were studying medicine in China. Now that number is slightly reduced, it's around 10,000. But this is something that we can do better, right? I mean, we should be establishing more and more high quality education institutions, including medical colleges, so that our students end up studying here, at least for their first degree, and if they want to go abroad for specialization, they can do that. In a way, we need to build capacity when it comes to teaching and education. We need to partner with institutions, including in China, for research as well as innovation and technology.
I can see that passion in you, Dr. Rajkumar, when you talk about collaborations in the field of education between India and China, being a founding Vice Chancellor yourself. But let me now bring in Ambassador C. Raj Shekhar now. He's a former senior diplomat, has been India's ambassador in Cuba as well, but has had responsibilities in China too, pursuing the Indian cause with even Japan for that matter. Welcome again, Ambassador Shekhar. What do you make of the prospect of this bilateral meeting that is taking place right now? We'll talk about the SCO as well. The summit really gets rolling effectively tomorrow, although there's going to be a banquet tonight as well. But right now, of course, the eyes of the world completely trained on Tianjin because President Xi is meeting Prime Minister Modi.
Thank you very much. It's indeed a great pleasure and honor to join this discussion. I would like to fully agree with the discussion before. You have eminently articulated, analyzed, and this is something a very worthy, noble, lofty ideal value that India-China friendship, because it is of profound significance not only to our two countries but to the region and the world also. So it is worth investing. I'm very happy, privileged to join this discussion. And you were mentioning about my work. So I was also Director East Asia back in the day, 2 decades ago. And I may recall that time we had laid down the guiding principles for identifying the border between the two countries. We have been making progress incrementally. So before having said that thing, I would like to get into the discussion today that before we place huge unrealistic expectations, as it is, there is expectation because Honorable Prime Minister is there after 7 years, 7 long years, whereas we should ideally have annual or even more frequent interactions. We should not be unrealistic in expecting that during this meeting, which is in fact a multilateral meeting of so many countries, heads of states, we shouldn't expect that suddenly there will be a magical reset or turnaround in relations. We should, as the anchor said rightly, that we should be content with realistic incremental progress, step by step, because having gone to skirmishes, it's not easy to reset, but we have within us, between us, India and China, enough civilization wisdom to realize the value of India-China friendship, and also we do have the toolkit to go about addressing. Occasionally there will be pinpricks because as neighbors we have much in common, much happening. Despite our discouraging India-China trade is growing exponentially. I think already it has exceeded $110 billion so far. So we do well to learn from others who are doing like Japan, you had mentioned.
Right. Ambassador, if I may come in at this point in time, two questions there. In September, one could not have imagined that things would move to this level, because in October the Kazan meeting happened, and though of course initial breakthroughs were announced before the Kazan meeting on the disengagement of troops there, though de-escalation is yet to happen and troops are still there, 50,000 each as per reports along the line of actual control. So what really changed, do you think? And second, there was a comment that was earlier made by Professor Rajkumar. Right, we'll take that forward, but let's tell our viewers that the bilateral meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping, the host of the SCO Summit, had started a short while back. These are visuals that have now come in, a handshake between the two leaders and the Chinese and Indian delegation meeting each other on the sidelines of the SCO Summit. China is the host of the 25th SCO Summit. It's the 5th time that China is hosting it. A lot of expectations from the bilateral meeting, whose visuals we are playing out for you.
Yes, the leaders have made comments there as well. I'm sure we'll learn shortly of the content of those comments, the opening comments as well for this bilateral meeting. Right now, we're not playing out the audio for you, but we will have it for you, the content of that very soon as well. But you can see that is a very telltale image as well. The two leaders shaking hands with the flags in the background and then sitting across each other, talking to each other face to face after, well, October last year, but Prime Minister Modi in China after 7 years. And this in itself is a big occasion if you look at the way things have progressed from Kazan onwards. Incremental progress is what we've seen, and well, there is always a debate about what kind of incremental progress should happen next, because as long as you have troops massed up on either side, that the scope for incremental progress again is something that becomes debatable.
Yes, so let's go back to Ambassador now. Ambassador, your thoughts on what really has made the start of normalization possible starting October last year, and also is it possible to insulate the problems that one faces diplomatically and militarily between the two sides from people-to-people ties, because there was a comment that was made by Professor Rajkumar that it is important that certain things do not change. For instance, the number of Indians who are studying there in China, why should that number come down if ties are impacted diplomatically?
I mostly agree with Professor Rajkumar Sahab. What he said makes eminent sense. Now, going back to what is causing to this improvement upswing in relations. First thing is, having gone to war almost 2020, fortunately a minor manageable skirmish, relations could not have gone any further down south. So we have hit the lowest point between two great civilizations. So having gone that low, the next stage can only be positive and improvement. That is the first point. Second point is that India and China have enough civilizational wisdom between us, so that in the last Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit at Kazan last year, it was agreed long before President Trump has appeared on the horizon that now it's time that we shall sit together, put our cool heads together and see how we can improve our relations. Then came September onwards. You used the timeline of September last year. Now, by September, October, it was clearer that President Trump is standing a distinct prospect of winning and going to sit again in the White House. So October I would put as the cutoff line, that we have also started warmly reciprocating. We had sent our foreign secretary, and by now we had foreign secretary, NSA, foreign minister, and our Raksha Mantriji. And likewise, from there also corresponding visits took place. And Mr. Wang Yi, who is the foreign policy czar of China, he was very courteous to visit us last fortnight, long before the Trump's extra tariffs had come into force. So China is also positive. It is extending a hand of friendship. It is time that we avail this and see where there is convergence, where we can add value, and where we can make progress. There is enough convergence, there is enough wisdom between us, and there is the toolkit wherewithal for us to improve. And it is worthy that the outcome will only be helpful to both countries and region and the world at large.
Okay, let's talk about that. Professor C. Rajkumar, if I could come back to you. Do you think that these two leaders can send out a strong message where Donald Trump and his tariffs are concerned? Because now that relations are improving, perhaps China could look at how an Indian misgiving that has been there in the past about non-tariff barriers and not really trading, not really a fair two-way trade happening between India and China. At least that could be addressed, because that would be an answer to Donald Trump as well.
Yes, I think it's only fair to say that we need to keep these relationships independently for what it is worth. So while this meeting is happening in the background of it, and I appreciate Ambassador Chandrasekhar's articulation, Rajshekhar's articulation about how we came into the position where we are today. But to respond to your question, I think it's only fair that we need to build our relationship with China independently. And you may notice that in the early phase of President Trump's reactions to China, very heavy tariffs was also imposed there. But then very quickly, upon advice, he realized that there is far too much dependence of United States in relation to China, especially with regard to the rare earth and rare minerals. And so the fact that it was considered as Americans' enlightened national interest not to impose such heavy tariffs on China, and hence they kind of backtrack, and now they've come to a more reasonable, acceptable, negotiated settlement on that front.
I think it's still 30%.
What I'm trying to say is that it's important for India to position its relationship with China independently and negotiate on all those aspects of the relationship between India and China. I do believe that the trade potential is significant, despite we be conscious of certain sectors where we may not want to have Chinese companies and corporations to be involved in.
Okay, let me take that point across to Ambassador Rajshekhar as well. Ambassador Rajshekhar, can China itself, can it look at the fact that it wants to right now champion globalization in face of American protectionism, and one way to showcase that would be to ensure that India gets a fair space in its markets, not to the extent that it has in India. That may not be possible in the immediate, but at least certain barriers come down, and perhaps levies too.
Yes, that is the essence of diplomacy. That's the way actually our role and contribution have to come. As Professor has said, enlightened self-interest. That is what guides. Say no country, no foreign country takes sympathy, pity at us and buys from us or invests us. They do whatever they do, whether it is investment, whether it is trade, or it is security cooperation, only when they are convinced in cold calculation that friendship and collaboration with India is going to help them. That is what we need to sit patiently with Chinese counterparts also, that friendship with India is in the interest, in the enlightened interest of China. There we can add value for the betterment of Chinese people, economy and nation. Then only there can be a growth and traction. Otherwise, I go and say that, please do this for me. This is in my interest. No, it doesn't cut ice at all. So there are many areas that because of the heat of the moment, we have chosen to show our displeasure. That was 5 years ago. And a wise man is never constantly angry. So anger also has to be managed. We were angry, we expressed our displeasure very unequivocally. And now it's time, and that's what the signal from Beijing also. We should fully reciprocate this and proceed to see where we can add value to both sides. For example, you mentioned very rightly, a professor has mentioned that visas. So visas were denied to Chinese who were to come to help us, to help Indian economy. I'll give you one concrete example nearer home. In Telangana state, we have Singareni Collieries, which is 100% government enterprise. Government of India and state government together. And for increasing the productivity, production of coal mining, the Chinese were to come along with the equipment to install and also train our people. And we could not issue visas to them. That was the height of the tensions. Now we should go past that to see that we don't need to shoot in our own foot. We should see where interaction, collaboration, transaction is going to help us, we should be open-minded to let that pass. In fact, investment was mentioned. India needs investment. All that can flow into India because we are growing at 6%, 6.5%. We will do well to grow 7%, 8% so that we can lift our millions of masses from poverty and also provide them all the essentials like nutrition, healthcare, education, all these things. So we need to see where all we can get sustenance, propulsions for growth. If investment comes from, our Rig Veda also says that let noble thoughts come from all directions. Similarly, let investment flow. Investment also doesn't flow simply because we wish it. Investment comes because both sides realize that, investment is going to be secure and profitable to the investor. So we have to create the conducive environment. That is the role of the governments. And we are very happy that our leadership is there with that full open mind. Just like last year's Kazan meeting of SCO, similarly we can expect improvement. But I would request to temper those expectations, especially media is very fond of creating hype.
Right, Ambassador, but should we temper our expectations vis-a-vis the wording in the joint declaration as well? Because India's stand was pretty clear during the defense ministers meeting.
We're just hold on a second. We're just playing out what the Prime Minister said in that bilateral meeting with President Xi. Let's listen into what the PM said.
1 बिलियन लोगों के हित जुड़े हुए, इससे पूरी मानवता के कल्याण का मार्ग भी प्रशस्त होगा। परस्पर विश्वास, सम्मान और संवेदनशीलता के आधार पर हम अपने संबंधों को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए प्रतिबद्ध हैं। एजेंसी चीन द्वारा SCO की सफल अध्यक्षता के लिए मैं आपको बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं। एक बार फिर चीन यात्रा के निमंत्रण के लिए और आज की हमारी बैठक के लिए आपका हार्दिक धन्यवाद।
So there you heard Prime Minister Narendra Modi's remarks from the bilateral meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping towards the end. He said that India is committed to take forward ties with China on the basis of constant trust and respect and sensitivities to our concerns. Let's listen in to Prime Minister's remarks once again.
मैं आपका हृदय से आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। पिछले वर्ष कजान में हमारी बहुत ही सार्थक चर्चा हुई थी। हमारे संबंधों को एक सकारात्मक दिशा मिली। सीमा पर डिसएंगेजमेंट के बाद शांति और स्थिरता का माहौल बना हुआ है। हमारे स्पेशल रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स के बीच बॉर्डर मैनेजमेंट के संबंध में सहमति बनी। कैलाश मानसरोवर यात्रा फिर से शुरू की। दोनों देशों के बीच डायरेक्ट फ्लाइट भी फिर से शुरू की जा रही है। हमारे सहयोग से दोनों देशों के 2.8 बिलियन लोगों के हित जुड़े हुए, इससे पूरी मानवता के कल्याण का मार्ग भी प्रशस्त होगा। परस्पर विश्वास, सम्मान और संवेदनशीलता के आधार पर हम अपने संबंधों को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए प्रतिबद्ध है। एजेंसी चीन द्वारा SCO की सफल अध्यक्षता के लिए मैं आपको बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं। एक बार फिर चीन यात्रा के निमंत्रण के लिए और आज की हमारी बैठक के लिए आपका हार्दिक धन्यवाद।
So very positive comments there by Prime Minister Modi. If I could just ask you for your take on that, Ambassador C. Rajshekhar? What do you make of the Prime Minister's opening comments when that bilateral took place?
Such talking points, drafts, long years. So what happens in this kind of summit is that the Honorable Prime Minister, this side, he lays down the foundation to the approach of the meeting. And he is laying down clearly using three key words: mutual respect and trust and confidence and
compassion.
Mutual
trust, respect, and sensitivities to our concerns.
Vishwas, Samman, Samvedanshilta. So these three keywords shall be the guiding principles. He is saying, signaling that we wish the summit under your chairmanship, leadership, every success India will contribute. But these are actually, you are asking exactly the same thing has been answered in so many words. You asked, whether does it mean for the sake of friendship with China, will we compromise, will we undermine, will we surrender national interests of India? No. Say we have a national position, for example, zero tolerance on terrorism. That's an absolute red line. Just as in trade discussions with you, as we said, sorry, it will take us time for Indian agriculture and dairy and poultry to become competition. These are red lines. Similarly, this side also, friends not only gain and cooperate, friends also understand each other's situations and positions and weaknesses and deadlines. That's what you are saying. Mutual respect and trust and faith and sympathy. Say, you cannot expect me to be in your shoes right away. So where we have our core concerns, we expect you to respect and understand. Likewise, we will also extend them. That's what,
right.
Honorable Prime Minister is laying down the ground, laying down the foundation for the approach of the next relations. The similar thing happened in Kazan also. Now we can expect that, to this progress to further, make progress.
Right. Professor, as India summed up its concerns and its stance really as far as bilateral relationship is concerned, that these are some of India's core concerns like, counterterrorism or respecting India's territorial integrity and sovereignty. These will not be compromised, and the relationship has to be built on mutual trust and respect and sensitivity to concerns.
I think Ambassador Rajshekhar quite rightly summarized it, and these are issues that will, I think he sets foundation for the relation. By the way, in the past also these issues have been highlighted, and that's one of the important aspects of the relationship, that both countries are conscious of the fact that there are very critical aspects which need to be respected because of our long years of civilization heritage. China has also gone through its own struggles of colonialism. And so these are aspects which are deeply embedded in the relationship. But I once again want to say that it is also in India's national interest to recognize that today we are at the very important cusp of moving into a knowledge society where science and technology will play a very significant role in addressing a number of social and economic problems and challenges that are being faced in our country. Of course, we know that AI and quantum will play a very important role, but we need to recognize that China has already played a leadership role. I mean, China operates AI at scale. Now, China today leads the world's artificial intelligence publications and all AI-related patents, while the US actually only leads in private AI investment and notable frontier models. Chinese research engine is massive and it's also applied, and I think India can benefit by it. We of course also know that in quantum leadership, China has built a space-to-ground quantum network, and I believe by 2025 it's going to become operational and it will become a QKD backbone spanning 10,000 kilometers across 17 provinces in China. Now, we have similar challenges in India, and I think it's important for us to get that sort of collaboration with China, which will address these challenges and problems. So I go back to what I said earlier.
Certainly, India is aware of China's capabilities and the kind of potential there could be if ties between India and China improved, if they go beyond normalization, perhaps, if that is possible with this incremental approach that has been taken. But at the same time, even China would be conscious of why it needs India, Ambassador Rajshekhar, because I'm just looking for example, we've just had a tremendous quarter GDP figures coming out, which went beyond the expectations of most of the analysts.
True. See, India has the potential to impart sustained growth for China also. So, where will the excess capacity production of Chinese goods go? So, India is the next door large, vast market that can absorb. We are the largest population, and there is great potential for high growth for a long-term period. And investment, like water, finds its level. So investment goes where it's going to be secure and where it's going to provide rich dividends. So that is India. So China as much needs India, and China is aware of it. That's why.
And it needs to live up to the promises of the past. We've seen the promises that were made in 2014 itself. They've not been lived up to.
Yes, this is where, our job comes, that, we cannot wish that everybody else outside India will play to our tune. Neither we are superpower, nor we should live in, wishful thinking. That's where we need to bend our back, that we need to manage our relations. We need to understand with interlocutors what are their core concerns, what are issues. For example, if you pardon me, so we have to understand Beijing's perspective. From China's perspective, India is not a rival for China immediately. So maybe 2 decades hence, immediately, what is China's core concern is, as China would aspire to take its rightful place on the global stage, China's nazar, China's nishan, target is US, not India. China, if you pardon me, has left India behind long ago, and as Ambassador Shyam Charan has eminently put it, that India is an image, receding image in the rear view mirror of China. China is growing, has gone maybe minimum a decade ahead, as Professor Rajkumar has explained, that we have much to catch up. So India is not immediately a core concern for China in terms of strategic concern. What is core concern is that India crossing over into the Western fold through Quad and these things. So we need to sit and patiently explain to them that a strong India, a friendly India for China, is in China's interest. That India, at the end of it all, is a fellow Asian country. We will look for stability. India has never entertained, harbored aggressive intentions, aspirations. So these conversations we need to patiently sit and do with China, as we do. In foreign policy, like in Test cricket, there are no easy solutions, easy challenges. These can be very tricky. We may fail today, we may fail tomorrow, we may fail next year. But India, China, the goal, the value is of such profound significance that it is worth trying again and again. I would invoke the example of Bhagiratha, who has brought down Ganga, to planet Earth. That it didn't happen in one generation. I may not succeed, but the value of India-China friendship is such that I shall continue to persevere. I may not succeed, but next generation. Also, we don't need to despair that our ancient ancestors had showed us the path how India and China as civilizations have peacefully existed together and enriched each other and traded. If you go to Chhatrapati Shivaji, what's it called, Prince of Wales Museum in Mumbai, there is rich record of how India and China used to trade 1,000 years ago and enrich each other. So we have such a great example to follow. And what happened in 1962 or what happened in 2017, what happened in 2020 need not unduly rankle us. Actually, if you see...
Right, Ambassador, we'll come back to you. Let's get a view quickly from Tianjin, the venue of the bilateral meeting and also the SCO Summit. Our correspondent Jessica Taneja joining us live from there. Good morning to you, Jessica. We've heard Prime Minister Narendra Modi's remarks from the bilateral meeting. India articulating its concerns there and also emphasizing on the need for respect, sensitivity towards India's concerns. Would you say that this is very much on expected lines, that India would not compromise when it comes to its core concerns?
And Jessica, let me add, yet the tone was very constructive, very positive. it just set the tone for the talks, really.
That's correct. And if you go by what was discussed during Wang Yi's visit to India just a week ago, when he extended that invitation to the Prime Minister to attend the SCO, you look at the 10-point consensus, you look at the early harvest deal, India has made its point very clear that it would want peace and tranquility on the borders. And certain movements in that direction have been made. You talk about model of Sikkim, but apart from the border issues and the WMCC mechanism that has already been there, we also saw the resumption of special representative talks where NSA Ajit Doval went to Beijing, and then again Wang Yi was here to extend those. And certainly in both directions, it seems to be that India and China are looking at a partial rapprochement, carrying forward what they had established in Kazan when the two leaders had met after the 2020 standoff. Certainly in that direction, trade resumption has made quite a different turn, and also has been something that the two sides were exploring, apart from also resumption of direct flights. But this meeting is quite crucial, not just in the backdrop of the SCO, but also in also China as a strategic partner, in a sense where a country with whom we share a 3,500-kilometer border, but also look at the trade and the economics. It is China which is one of the largest trading partners, and certainly, for India, and both India and China, it would be important in that sense to have, peace and tranquility on the border, respect, the mutual concerns of both, especially for India, because it has always maintained that, there will facilitation of trade and the ties would certainly improve in the right direction, given that India's concerns are taken at, accommodated in that sense, not just in words, but also in actions.
Right. And in terms of how India has been articulating its position about how to take this rapprochement forward, where the situation on the border, the line of actual control is concerned, it wasn't mentioned in the Prime Minister's opening remarks, but I'm sure in the discussions there is something that would have come up.
Well, we'll wait for those details, Gautam. I don't want to jump the gun. We will wait out and see what the two leaders discuss, and that communique will be given to us in a short while from now. But I can assure you, the talks between the Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping also would talk about the broader consensus of the SCO, whose framework is completely laid out on the outlines of combating. Certainly, India has one of those concerns, apart from, of course, trade connectivity and other issues that the two leaders have discussed so far. But we'll wait for that communique and let's see what all was discussed beyond, the points that you already mentioned.
Right, Jessica, what more can we expect now? Today, as the SCO Summit begins with a welcome banquet dinner, and tomorrow when the main summit takes place, also more bilateral meetings expected for the Prime Minister.
Right, you would expect more bilateral meetings. There are 20 member nations attending this summit, 10 of course part of the 10 members of the SCO, but there are dialogue partners, there are observers as well. So expect lots of activities. There are not many details available as to what those bilateral meetings would be, because they're decided at the moment. So that slot will be available tomorrow. But what I can tell you is, there could be a possible meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin as well, because Russia and China, as they collectively had started SCO back in 2001, have been an important player. And also Russian and Chinese are the official languages of the SCO. So we're expecting the meeting with President Putin as well. The rest of the bilaterals, I think we'll have to wait for tomorrow when the engagements begin and those details are put out.
Right, Jessica, we'll keep coming back to you for more updates. For now, we'll move on to the discussion. Well, Ambassador, coming to you on the other bilateral, Jessica also mentioned that the Prime Minister will be having during the course of the SCO Summit with President Putin, and it will be the first after President Trump imposed 50% tariffs on India. And just a short while back, Prime Minister did tweet on how he had spoken to the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Do you think that there would be a conversation between the two sides where they would discuss, President Putin's meeting in Alaska with President Trump, besides, of course, the cooperation that India has in the context of defense supplies and energy supplies, and also the upcoming visit of President Putin to India for the annual summit in December? And also, do you think that ground could be laid for the revival of the RIC triumvirate mechanism, Russia, India, China, that used to exist many years ago?
Yes, there'll be, as the reporter Jessica has conveyed from the ground, there'll be a lot of conversations, some in the form of proper sit-down, one-to-one delegation-level conversations, some pull-asides. The sum and substance is, thanks to Trump, now there is an imperative that all countries need to come together, stick together, put our heads together to see how we can ensure that multilateral institutions, multilateral mechanisms like trade investment can survive unilateral and abrupt whimsical impositions like tariffs and all. So that would naturally be one important consideration. You asked specifically with President Putin. I will recall that our Honorable Prime Minister has given a very interesting observation about Russia, that ask any young little child on any street of India, who is India's best friend? Without batting an eyelid, they will immediately say Russia. So India-Russia relations, as Honorable EAM has recently said, have been steadiest relations. And this is an opportunity in the light of, again, the geopolitical, geoeconomic situation that we need to further consolidate, deepen and expand those relations. And similarly, like with all other countries also will be doing. You asked about Alaska debriefing. It is a courtesy, it's a courteous tradition that whenever, for example, President Putin had this important conversation, he will courteously debrief an important interlocutor like Prime Minister Modi, that he had these discussions with Alaska, and he had explained Russian perspective that Russia had to do what it did because it felt existential threat from Ukraine. NATO coming to Ukraine, that's the lesson that they had learned from the Second World War, that never again Russian blood shall spill. They cushioned Russia with 14 other republics. So Ukraine, NATO missiles and weapons coming into Russia border was completely unacceptable, just as we say that our territorial integrity, our terrorism, our stance is simply non-negotiable. That's what Putin said Niyat in 2007 Munich Security Summit. So he would have said that, I had these conversations useful with President Trump, and I could obtain greater understanding of President Trump about Russian perspective, because so far it has been through media and third-party hearsay versions. That Alaska provided a first-hand opportunity to President Putin. He had fully utilized, and he will say that what they had agreed to take it forward. And Prime Minister Modi would certainly encourage that, dialogue and diplomacy is the way, because war doesn't help nobody. Even at the end of war also, we have to sit and talk. He would encourage Putin, and he would appreciate, congratulate him for the dialogue that he has begun, and he would wish that process success.
Well, certainly that is something that India would want, because of the imposition of secondary tariffs against India, 25% and 25% plus, because of the fact that we've been buying oil from Russia. That, do you think, would be something that might figure in the conversation as well? Again, Prime Minister Modi had spoken to President Putin about that in the past as well, saying it's not the era of war. Do you think that is something that could be brought up again? Because that is the only way to go, because India has already said very clearly that it will not really compromise on the interest of the nation when it comes to getting oil from Russia, because we're getting it at reasonable rates, and just because Donald Trump doesn't like it, we're not going to stop doing that.
You want me?
Yes.
We can trust, our, brainy diplomats to come up with a different formulation, if not repeating exactly, this is not era of war. This time, probably we should say that, mutual investment and trade is in everybody's interest. Trade helps all the boats to lift.
Mr. Prime Minister, it's a great pleasure for me to meet you again this time in Tianjin. Welcome to come to China for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Tianjin Summit. Last year, you and I had a successful meeting in Kazan, and the China-India relationship had a reset and the start of a new year. The two sides have earnestly implemented the important consensus we have agreed, and the bilateral exchanges and cooperation have since made new progress.
当前，世界百年变局加速演进，国际形势变乱交织。中国和印度是两大东方文明古国，是世界上人口最多的两个国家，也是全球南方重要成员，肩负着造福我国人民、促进发展中国家团结振兴、推动人类社会进步的重要责任。做睦邻友好的朋友，相互成就的伙伴，实现龙象共舞，应当是中印双方的正确选择。
The world today is swept by once-in-a-century transformations. The international situation is both fluid and chaotic. China and India are two ancient civilizations in the East. We are the world's two most populous countries, and we are also important members of the global South. We both shoulder the historical responsibility of improving the well-being of our two peoples, promoting the solidarity and rejuvenation of developing countries, and propelling the progress of human society. It is the right choice for both sides to be friends who have good neighborly and amicable ties, partners who enable each other's success, and to have the dragon and the elephant dance together.
今年是中印建交75周年，双方要坚持从战略高度和长远角度看待和处理中印关系，推动两国关系持续健康稳定发展。双方还要共同展现历史担当，坚持多边原则，携手推动世界多极化和国际关系民主化，为维护亚洲乃至世界和平和繁荣做出应有的贡献。
This year marks the 75th anniversary of China-India diplomatic ties. Both sides need to approach and handle our relationship from a strategic height and long-term perspective, so as to realize the sustained, sound and steady development of our bilateral ties. We must also step up to our historic responsibility to uphold multilateralism, work together to bring about a multipolar world and more democracy in international relations, and to make our due contributions to peace and prosperity in Asia and around the world.
So there you heard the remarks, which are opening remarks by Chinese President Xi Jinping in the bilateral meeting with PM Modi. He did speak initially about how both India and China are ancient civilizations, both are members of the global South, and that China stands for multilateralism, and that the multilateral order needs to be upheld. These were some of the statements that the Chinese president made in his opening remarks.
Yes, he also mentioned the fact that India and China are celebrating 75 years of their diplomatic ties, and also the fact that the world is facing a challenging situation at the moment, and the two most populous countries in the world can come together and send out a positive message to the world at this juncture. If I could again go back to our guests and bring in C. Raj Kumar as well. How do you see these two leaders' remarks? Now we have the opportunity to juxtapose them as well into seeing what kind of tone both of them laid for detailed talks. The first talks that they're having on Chinese soil in 7 years.
So, well, it's absolutely very positive and very futuristic, very, I would say, very mature as well. The tone and the tenor of the messaging that has begun this dialogue is, to me, it sets the right buttons for the future. let's also recognize that there are three critical areas where we need to pay our attention. One is, of course, the continuing security distrust between India and China, the economic imbalance, we talked about the $100 billion trade deficit, and of course the geopolitical situation in which how both countries will build relationship with others. Here I would argue that first and foremost, we need to cooperate where our interests converge. And there are a number of places that converge. For example, in climate change, in multilateral reform, in say global health, or even trade in many sectors. I mean, one of the things that global South countries such as India and China can do is to really play a leadership role. For example, BRICS and SCO and even the UN can articulate the regulatory regime for artificial intelligence. Most of the time, these rules and regulations are formulated by the global North, and global South, including India and China, need to adhere to it. For once, we have an opportunity to provide global leadership. Second, we need to manage our tensions, which are sometimes structural, be it border issues or, for that matter, Pakistan as well, the China-Pakistan relationship as well. And the third is, when we have crises, we need to contain them and compartmentalize them and have a more, say, ring-fenced approach towards dealing with the crisis by engaging in confidence-building measures. This is indeed an important wake-up call, wherein we need to ensure that this relationship is preserved and promoted for posterity.
Right. What would you like to come in with, Ambassador C. Rajshekhar, in terms of weighing the content of the kind of remarks that President Xi made in the light of what Prime Minister Modi said?
I would like to begin commending Professor Rajkumarji's contribution, intervention. I would like to go into what exactly President Xi has said. He used the critical words like historical responsibility. He said there is historical responsibility on our two countries as civilizations. But while Honorable Prime Minister put it very plainly, simple, that mutual respect and trust and samvedanshilta. So Chinese speak a little like in cricket, like swing ball. So when he says historical responsibility, it means, we expect you to maintain peace and tranquility and do not good neighborly relations like dragon and elephant, he said. Means we don't expect you to maintain good relations just as we expect India-Pakistan dialogue to be a bilateral issue. So China also is signaling, saying that don't go cross over to the West to bring them into our relations or regional differences and all. So let's sort out these things and keep long-term perspective, peace and prosperity. So these are the expressions, phrases that he has used, meaning that there is enough room. I fully agree with you that we'll work together, but don't cross over and don't bring third party. Just as we were very vehemently disapproving President Trump's claim that President Trump or US has brokered peace between India and Pakistan. Similarly, China is saying that we are neighbors, we shall be good neighbors. We have a historical responsibility as civilizations, and let's work together for prosperity and peace. Peace is all embracing. In peace there is the need imperative that we shall respect the national borders. There shall not be any violence. And also peace requires that there is no room for terrorism. From there we can, there is enough room for us to articulate and come up with formulations that zero tolerance for terrorism. There is no justification whatsoever to kill unarmed civilians, women and children in the name of whatever. No cause can justify terrorism and killing innocent civilians. We can weave all those things, formulations, but he has made very useful response that provides enough middle ground for us to make progress on international bilateral relations.
Right, Professor. On the way forward, do you think that we can now expect slowly more bilateral meetings and understandings between the two sides? We've already seen a number of visits, like Gautam was also pointing out. Wang Yi came to India, Defence Minister, External Affairs Minister have been to China, and of course after Kazan, this meeting now on Chinese soil taking place. A lot of decisions have been made, which the Prime Minister also spoke about, of starting direct flights, of starting the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. We know that the media visas were issued, which is why the Indian media delegation is there in China. Many more visas could well be issued going forward. But do you expect a further normalization of ties going forward, or would India and China be more cautious and have the trade tensions become a catalyst to bring India, China and various other countries together at the SCO, because it's now seeing the highest representation? And could that further be seen in an emergency BRICS summit, which President Lula has called to put up united resistance against Trump's tariffs?
So first and foremost, I think this has created a very strong signaling opportunity for, across both the countries. And I think we also don't need to depend upon the government to do everything. What the Honorable Prime Minister of India has done is to send a very powerful signal, recognizing the fact that we want to build strong relationship with China. It was not an easy thing to do after all what has happened, but it's the right thing to do, and that's why it was a very statesmanly act for him to actually go and participate in this meeting and to say what he did say. China, of course, is very mature in dealing with this relationship and has also responded in kind. What we should immediately look at is the kind of other actors, including the private sector engagement in both the countries. From our side, we should be revisiting those various bans in number of sectors, including various Chinese companies and corporations, for them to come into India. Are there inherent, sort of challenges that we have created for that? And of course, within the ring fencing that I talked about earlier, Ambassador Rajshekar talked about visas, where companies and corporations and individuals from China who are actually coming to help and participate in addressing some of India's problems, those should also be revisited. We as a small university, we have more than 30 partnerships in Chinese universities, and all of them ended up being stalled in the last several years. And so we would like our universities to revisit and re-engage with Chinese universities. There also need to be professional participation in the form of mobility of various professionals in both the countries. I strongly believe one of the things that we have not done, and this is something that we shouldn't be doing only after a crisis, after Operation Sindoor, with Prime Minister's vision, he sent multiple teams of parliamentarians and ambassadors to various countries in the world to explain India's position. I, for one, strongly believe that this should not be when a crisis happens. I think there is a strong case for Indian parliamentarians as well as bipartisan effort to engage with China. We should welcome Chinese members of the National People's Congress Standing Committee and other senior leaders from China.
Okay.
Each of these incremental measures will ultimately help us build the kind of trust and confidence that becomes a foundation for building the relationship of two extraordinarily important countries of the world through civilization, both these civilizations.
Okay, definitely. I mean, these are all things that could be explored if such positive movement continues. And we will also talk about another factor in India-China relations, which is an external one, the third factor, because what happened in Kazan after that, of course, two things happened. There was Pahalgam and there was Operation Sindoor as well. We haven't really touched upon that. But we'll take a quick break at this point. Do bear with us. I would request our guests to stay with us while we take a quick break, and we'll be back with this special coverage continuing after that.